welcome back, and delighted to have back with us today Drew Allen. He's the Vice President of Client Development there with Publius PR. He's the author of America's Last Stand, and he has a widely published columnist himself and the host of the popular Drew Allen Show podcast, so you can check that out. And drewallen.substack.com is his website. You can check that out. Drew, good to see you, buddy. How are you?
Hey, Perry. Good to be with you again.
Good. All right. So Liberation Day came and went and caused a shake, global shake. What's your take?
People need to calm down. You know, the Democrats and the media in particular are using this, you know, as a political issue. Democrats have never once cared about taxes. They didn't care about inflation under the Biden administration. They made fun of voters on election night, you know. Oh, you know, they're not really voting about the price of a hot dog. You know, they're just a bunch of racist, sexists who won't vote for a black woman. You know, I live in California, Perry. We've got gas taxes. My electric bill for a house that's less than 3,000 square feet is $800 a month. Gas is over $5, and that's due to taxes and policies here. So Democrats don't care at all about taxes. They love taxes. But when it comes to tariffs now, suddenly, they want to focus suddenly on how this is going to adversely affect the American people. And what's not being talked about in this conversation, of course, is a couple of things. One, I would just ask people the simple question, in what world is it fair that for 20 plus years, the rest of the world puts taxes on our goods that they import to discourage importing American goods, to protect their own industries, and yet the United States of America is expected to just never put any taxes on anybody else's goods coming into the United States of America. That's not free trade. We're playing a game that is rigged against us, and we're going along with it. And Donald Trump's come along and he said, we've had enough. We're going to protect industries at home. You can look at Detroit. You can look at steel plants. You can look across this country and see what our trade policies that favor other countries over our own have done to hollow this nation out, and we're not going to do this anymore. So, look, the stock market's reacting how it's going to react. It's going to bounce back. I mean, this is a ridiculous measure of what the tariffs are going to do anyway, because they haven't even really had time to go into effect. So it's all a bunch of baloney about nothing. But at the end of the day, Donald Trump is addressing something significant, which hasn't been addressed in a long time, which is the unfair trade deficit between other nations and ourselves. You know, we are not here to, take American dollars and just donate them around the world through our trade policy as well. And on top of that, the goal of this, yeah, some of it may be long-term tariffs, and I think there will be long-term benefits to the American people and worker. But also look at what's happening. We hold the cards here. Nation after nation is coming to the table and saying, hey, this is going to kill our economy because the Americans are the ones who are buying all of our goods. So can we sit down and talk about this and address tariff? So it's working. It's doing what it needs to do, which is to recalibrate the way things have been done.
Well said. Do you think the average American, until he held up that chart, really understood what this was all about?
No, I don't think so at all. And it's hard to to give the American people the benefit of the doubt. Tariffs are not a sexy conversation topic. They don't come up very often. There's a lot of ignorance about the issue, and the media is trying to seize upon that and take advantage of it. Look, tariffs are taxes. Absolutely, they're taxes. You know, it's the importer. You know, if I have a company and I import steel from, Europe. Yeah, that tariff's going to be put on me, my company, and I'm going to pass it on to the consumer. But here's the other thing. People act like this is some dark territory we've never waded into before, and that's not true because Donald Trump put 25%, I think was the number, tariffs on steel and aluminum from the European Union during his first term. And in fact, Joe Biden kept that around at least a year into his fake, autopin presidency. But the result of that was not catastrophic for the American people. Nobody even knows about it, but that happened already. So the American people just need to keep their wits about them. They need to remain calm and collected. They need to trust this president and this administration. And they need to not allow the media, which has lied about everything, for such a long time, to let them influence the way the American people are going to understand tariffs.
All right, I want to switch your attention. I only have you for one segment, so thank you, Drew, for your time. I want to go over to this judicial crisis we seem to be in. And there's a lot of talk about how to solve the problem, and will this Boasberg action eventually end up at the Supreme Court? And what do we do to correct this down the road? Question number one, has this uncovered a judicial rot that's been there and we just didn't know it?
Yeah. First off, yes, this originates at the university setting. If you go to the elite law schools, where I guarantee you most all these activist judges come out of, many of them go to Yale, they go to Harvard. Just like they're indoctrinating young people in undergraduate programs, they're doing the same thing in these law schools, and they're turning out people for this very purpose. And look, you can't legislate morality. The founding fathers understood that to a great extent. So we have a moral crisis in America. And it affects these district judges as well. These people were not elected by the American people. They have no right to go in and stay every single executive order, everything that Donald Trump and his administration do. That is not a separation of powers. But we're talking about abuse of power here, because you have to allow these judges a little bit of leeway to stay on a constitutional order. So, for example, when Joe Biden ignores the Supreme Court and says, I'm going to go ahead and forgive student loans. Well, he doesn't have the authority to do that. So a judge would be right in that circumstance to stay that order until, a hearing could take place to prevent that from going forward. But that depends upon the morality and of the judge, their ability to restrain themselves. And this is always going to be a problem in every country. We have a great system set up. It's better than every other country that exists. But we have judges who are tyrants right now, and we have a breakdown of the Constitution because these judges believe that it is their responsibility to act as political, a last stop for Democrats to, do what they were unable to do, convincing the electorate to vote for Kamala Harris.
All right. So the district judge is a creation of Congress to help with the judicial load, those court cases at that level. And some would argue to say we actually need to increase the amount of district judges because of the backlog of cases. I get that. But if Congress created that position in the judiciary, then Congress could go in and reform the authority of that judge. In other words, bring back his ability to reach clear over into federal cases. So question number one, do you think that's possible? And question number two is, if it does go all the way to the Supreme Court, what will they do about it?
Well, the Supreme Court, Roberts and a couple others, that are supposedly, originalists, supposed to be, right-leaning judges, they don't seem eager to deal with this situation at all. And in fact, they don't seem eager to deal with anything consequential in this country. They want to kick the can down the road, much like Congress has done with the budget and deficits and so on and so forth for a long time. It's really concerning. They need to get involved and address this because they need to define strictly the limits of these judges' powers, because until they do that, this is going to continue. If you look at the statistics of district judges suing, administrations, it's shocking. It's 3 or 4 times what has happened under either the Bush administration, the Obama administration. Under Trump, they're using this exclusively to interfere in his ability to govern as the executive. So there's not a great solution, because morality at the end of the day is what you want. You want these judges who are not going to abuse their power, but unfortunately, so much of the abuse is in these judicial appointments. And so I think that you have to be willing to play with fire here, which is going to be to impeach these people.
Okay, so Chief Justice Roberts has already set a signal. Don't do that. So he's already played his hand on that issue. Would the Supreme Court step in over the Congress on a judicial impeachment?
Some of them would. You can absolutely impeach these judges. They are not gods. if you can obviously impeach the president of the United States over hoaxes, you can certainly impeach these. I mean, this has to exist for balance of power. You cannot have rogue justices or judges out there, in this case, district judges, determining foreign policy. You're not a foreign policy expert, but yes, effectively what you have is you have these district judges that are activist Democrats who are now making themselves experts in foreign policy, who are going to dictate, whether we can deport and do this and do that. And it has to stop. And I don't know where it's going to end up, because ultimately, yeah, the Supreme Court is the highest court in the land. But again, this is the same Supreme Court that that claimed at one point that blacks were not human; they were subhuman. Again, the underlying issue with all of this is a lack of morality, a lack of understanding about the Constitution. And until you restore that, you're going to continue to have problems with abuses of power.
So have we given the Supreme Court powers that it shouldn't have? In other words, if it's the final arbiter on everything legal, which is supposed to weigh against the Constitution, but if the Constitution doesn't address it, then they are making a moral decision based upon their own biases.
Yeah, and they've done that frequently throughout this country's history. The decision throughout America's history effectively has been to honor those decisions. Although, I would argue in the example I was just giving you about the Supreme Court ruling prior to the Civil War that, blacks aren't humans, they're property. Obviously, that was an egregious ruling that was wrong and incorrect, but that was also one of the triggers that led to the Civil War. So, things happen in this country to deal with these horrific decisions and corruption. I don't want to get to that point. Obviously, nobody's arguing for a civil war, but it's a little bit frightful of a situation, in my opinion, because there's not a clean solution, Perry.
So one last question: if Boasberg is able to reach out and force the president to bring these thugs back, there are obviously some of them are M13, some MS-13, some of them are, obviously murderers, rapists, and all these bad things. Doesn't that, in the long run, continue to weaken the liberals for being for this?
Yeah, it does. It's a terrible stance to take, and I think the right answer, and some people will disagree with me, and you're wrong, I'm right, but he should ignore it. A bad ruling like this has to be ignored. What are they going to do? As long as we have the House, there's not going to be an impeachment over it, and so on and so forth. But you're talking about an original mistake here on the district courts. Why is it that the judges in this country, whether it's a district judge or someone else, if they make something that's an obviously unconstitutional ruling, if they're obviously acting beyond their power, if they're obviously abusing their power, why do we have an obligation to obey that and give them that authority? You have to have conflict at some point. And, it can't predict what the Supreme Court would do and everything else. But, what if the Supreme Court came back today, 2025, and said, yeah, black people aren't human beings, they're property, that's our ruling? I mean, what do you think that the people in this country would say? Should that be listened to because it's the Supreme Court? I don't think so.
Yeah, kind of crazy. So, just 30 seconds. What do you think of his first 100 days? Seems to be pretty interesting.
Oh, it's incredible. It's incredible. I mean, the political will he has, the political just power that he has right now with the backing of the American people, it's astonishing. He's standing strong on tariffs. I really am impressed. I've never seen somebody try to do so much good so quickly before. I mean, this is akin to FDR, but the reverse, because he's actually doing things that are good for the country. And look, the media is going to try and continue with these hoaxes from the Atlantic to convince you to break with Trump and to diminish his support. And we've got to support him and look towards midterms now, because if we lose the House, he's going to be impeached. So every day, the American people need to treat like it's 2024. And we saw in Wisconsin, the Republicans and voters didn't show up.
Good point. All right, drewallen.substack.com. That's his website, drewallen.substack.com. Check it out. A lot going on there. Thank you, Drew, for your time. We value it. Hang in there, buddy. And, you may want to consider moving out of California.
I hear that every day, Perry.
Okay, buddy. I'll come help drive the truck.
I'll call you.
Okay, see you later.